out here, and I was going through my tour, and I come around the corner here, and this place is all blocked off. We got security everywhere, and there's people everywhere. Oh, man, what's going on now? There's a big Alison Craft concert going on.
Oh, cool.
And so they had like this whole area blocked off.
Oh my.
And I like went up to one of the guys and was like, so when is this gonna open back up? He's like, how do you need to get right over there? He was like, about 30, 40 minutes ago, you'll be good. So I was like, okay, I can do that. So waiting to do the rest of my tour and then ended up over here. So, but yeah, you never know what you're gonna run into.
Yeah.
Stuff out here.
Yeah.
So, at the end here on the right is Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art.
All right.
So it is going to be a stand-in for the story, because like I said, it takes place primarily in Wisconsin. It all concerns the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright, world famous architect, he's done buildings all over the United States, and he's even was working on a building in Tokyo, Japan, when he passed away in 1962. Now, he built himself a work spot in Spring Green, Wisconsin, his hometown. It was called Taliesin. Taliesin is a Welsh word which means shining brow, like you got sweat on your forehead.
Yeah.
So he builds himself an artistic retreat, a little place where he can work. He was married and had 5 kids, so it makes sense that he wanted to get out of the house, find somewhere to have some quiet. So he builds Taliesin, and then in 1930s he takes a tour of the United States. He starts going all across the country, touring all these different areas. He winds up here in Scottsdale in 1937 in the wintertime. And he says, oh my goodness, this is amazing weather. It's like 60 degrees, sunshine, this is amazing. And so he decides he's going to build himself a house out here in Scottsdale. Now, his house back in Spring Green, Wisconsin was called Taliesin. So, of course, the house that he builds out here in Scottsdale is called Taliesin West, right? Because it's the same thing, right? So he builds Taliesin West in 1937, and he becomes a snowbird. He spends his winters out here in Scottsdale and his summers back home in Wisconsin.
All right.
So that's his connection out here to Scottsdale. Now, the story that I got for you takes place in 1914, and like I said, it takes place all in Wisconsin, but at the end it'll connect back to Scottsdale. So just hang in there with me for a minute.
Yeah.
So 1914, he is working away at Taliesin, his little artistic retreat. Like I said, it's where he goes to get some work done, to get some peace and quiet from his wife and 5 kids. At least that's what he officially claims. Unofficially, it's where he goes to hang out with his mistress, one Martha Cheney. Now, Martha was the wife of a local businessman who had hired Frank to build a building for him in Chicago. So Frank met this guy, building a building for him, designing a building for him in Chicago, and met his wife, and then started an affair with his wife. Now, Spring Green, Wisconsin is the smallest town, so pretty much everyone knew the affair was going on. It's kind of the town's worst kept secret. However, they just carry on. They don't really care. One day, Martha's husband goes sick of it and says, all right, that's it, I'm done. Either leave Frank or I'm leaving you. To which she says, bye, and goes and just tells Frank, hey, I'm divorcing my husband. And Frank says, all right, you're single, let me see what I can do. He goes to his wife and says, hey, I've got this affair going on, we all know about it. He's like, I'm leaving you. To which she says, no, you are my meal ticket, we've got 5 kids together, I am not letting you off that easy. This starts a very long, lengthy legal divorce between Frank and his first wife. But he doesn't really care. He's like, whatever, all right, you can take it up in the courts, we'll fight it out there. But in the meantime, I'm moving into Taliesin, and I'm going to stay there with Martha. I'm just going to live there with Martha. So him and Martha move into Taliesin. Now, it's him, it's Martha, it is, they have a butler named Julian Carlton, and Julian's wife Gertrude is the maid. So the 4 of them are all there. And Frank starts to build an addition onto Taliesin, right? A little residential area. Before it was more of a workspace. Now he's going to add on this whole residential area. So he's got the 4 of them living there, and he's got 6 construction workers working on adding on this addition. Now, one day, Frank's called away to Chicago for business. He's got a new building he's going to go design out in Chicago. So he takes off and leaves. He leaves Martha and her two kids are there with her that weekend. It's Julian and Gertrude and the 6 construction workers. So about 10 people in the house. Now, Frank takes off. He goes to Chicago on the train. Now, somewhere throughout the day, Martha is hanging out with her two kids. It's about lunchtime, and she is fixing them lunch. Now, all the story that I'm about to tell you all comes from one of the construction workers, a man named Fritz. He's the one who retells all this stuff. Okay. So, throughout the day, he's working on the residential addition to it, and he notices a number of weird things. First thing he notices is they hear the splashing of water, as if somebody just got buckets of water and just throwing it around everywhere. They think it's weird, but it's happening in the next room over. They're not paid to worry about what's going on over there. He's just, I don't know what's going on, but there might be cleaning or whatever. I don't know. I'm hanging drywall and doing my stuff over here. So he continues on. Later on in the day, he sees some brownish liquid kind of seep underneath the door that separates them from the residence. And he thinks that's weird, but I don't know, maybe it's dirty mop water or something like that. So, once again, ignores it, goes about his day. Now, halfway through the day, around lunchtime, okay, Julian goes to his wife Gertrude and says, all right, I need you to get out of the house for a little while. He says, what do you mean? He's like, just go into town, do some grocery shopping, regular shopping, I don't know, I don't care, just get out of the house for a while. She goes, okay, well, she thinks this is weird, but she says, all right, fine. She's going to listen to her husband, and she leaves. She leaves and heads into town, at which point Julian goes out to the shed out back behind the house, grabs the wood-splitting axe, comes back into the house, and uses said axe to split open Martha's head. Murders Martha and both of her children. Now, he attacks those 3. When that happens, 2 of the construction workers hear this commotion going on. They run around the corner to see what happens. They're also attacked and murdered as well. So Julian's now killed 5 people, right? Martha, her 2 kids, and the 2 construction workers. This is when Fritz pops his head around the corner to see what the heck is going on after hearing all this. And that's when he sees Julian, axe in one hand, lit match in the other. That was not dirty mop water that had seeped underneath the door. That was gasoline. So he drops the match, lights the house on fire. That's when Fritz and the other 3 remaining construction workers take off, fleeing out of the house, heading towards to the town. Now, Julian is last seen heading into the burning building. So they get to the town, they alert the police, they alert the fire department. They're actually able to put out the fire fairly easily. Not a lot of damage has been done to Taliesin. It's all mainly superficial. So this house is still standing, everything's still there, and they put out the fire relatively easily. So once that's done, the cops then go into the house looking for Julian. Like I said, everyone last saw him running into the burning building. They find him in the basement of the house. He has swallowed a bunch of acid in an attempt to kill himself. But, just like he failed to burn down the house, he's also failed to kill himself. He's still very much alive, and he's taken into police custody. He spends the next 2 weeks in police custody being questioned by the police. They ask him all kinds of questions. Why did he do it? Everything else. He says absolutely nothing. And after about 2 weeks of being in custody, he dies. Now, he dies officially of starvation. And we don't know if this was another suicide attempt, he had gone on hunger strike to kill himself, or if this was a result of having swallowed a bunch of acid and burning the crap out of his throat, right? Like maybe just eating was excruciatingly painful. Either way, 2 weeks, doesn't say anything, and he dies of starvation. Now, when Frank hears about everything, he hops on the train, heads on back as fast as he can. He gets home, and he's immediately met by the police, and they're questioning him. They're asking him all kinds of questions. And the number one question they're asking him is, do you have any idea why Julian would have done this? Frank has no clue. He says, look, I had fired Julian. He's like, but I had done my best to set him up and help him out. There was another family in town that I knew that was looking for a maid/butler, so I had set Julian up with the job interview with them, gave him a good reference, so I had paid him throughout the end of the month. I had done my best to make sure that he landed on his feet, so it doesn't sound like it was a disgruntled employee type of thing. So they go, okay, well, man, all right, we have no idea why you would have done this then. They ask him, well, why did you fire Julian? And that's when Frank tells him, well, Julian had been acting increasingly erratic and weird leading up to the murders. I go, well, what do you mean? Well, I would find him just kind of shuffling around the house, mumbling to himself. He would just be staring out the window at nothing, obviously neglecting his work, and that's why I fired him. So this leads most people to have one of two theories. Either Julian had some sort of undiagnosed mental health issue and had finally cracked and gone crazy and murdered Martha and her two kids. That's scientific theory. The other one is the paranormal theory. There was some sort of evil entity kind of driving him to murder, driving him to madness. A spirit, a possession, a haunting, whatever it may be. So those are the kind of two theories. Which one you choose to believe is entirely up to you. All right, so Frank, will tell you that Martha was the love of his life. That was his one true love. He had been married, right, with kids before her. Yeah. He's going to get married after her. Sorry, wife wanted to. Martha was the one and only love of Frank. So much so that he actually buries her on the grounds of Taliesin in Spring Green, Wisconsin. Buries her body there. And then in 1951, when he passes away, he asks to be buried not beside his first or second wife, but beside Martha. So he's buried right next to Martha on the grounds of Taliesin in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And that is where the story should end. But 1983, some genius comes up with an idea. See, Scottsdale had a problem. There wasn't a lot of tourism out here at Taliesin West. So the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, they own the rights to his likeness and all of his buildings and whatnot, they had to figure out a way to boost tourism in Scottsdale. So some genius comes up with the idea of, hey, let's dig up Frank and Martha's bodies, cremate their bodies, and then we'll split their ashes between Spring Green, Wisconsin and Scottsdale, Arizona. Don't know how they were allowed to do this, right? It was in Frank's will that he wanted to be buried next to Martha in Spring Green, and that was it. Yeah. But somehow they're able to do it. I don't know. Maybe his kids didn't care what happened to him after he abandoned them and their mom. I don't know. But they are able to do it. So they dig up the bodies, they cremate the remains, they spread half the remains in Scottsdale, half the remains in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And the idea is that now they could say that there's a connection here, right? Come out to Taliesin West. Frank Lloyd Wright's ashes are spread here. They think this is going to uptick in tourism. So we got two stories that take place out here in Scottsdale, out in Taliesin West. The first one is from a tour guide. Her name is Maria. She's a tour guide out in Spring Green, or out in Taliesin West, out here in Scottsdale. She is out in the desert gardens out behind the house. She's sitting there giving the tour to her tour group. And she notices back behind the tour group, there's a man standing at the edge of the desert gardens, and he's just kind of standing there with his back turned to her. Now, this is weird for a number of reasons, but number one, he's not part of the tour group. She also doesn't recognize him as being anyone on staff. So she's like, all right, this is weird. She kind of keeps her eye on him. But she finishes up her spiel. She tells her tour group to head on into the house and that she will join them in a minute. And that's when she turns and starts walking towards the sky. She takes a step or two towards him, and he stops and turns around and faces her. And at this point, she starts to realize a couple of things aren't adding up. One, he's wearing a fedora and a three-piece suit. Not exactly how you dress in the early 2010s, which is when this is taking place. But when he turns around, he looks at her, they lock eyes, he smiles at her, and tips his hat at her. She immediately recognizes him. She has seen this guy every single day when she clocks into work. Because when she walks into the foyer of Taliesin, there's a big painting of Frank Lloyd Wright there, and that is who she sees. So she has this moment with the ghost of Frank Lloyd Wright. They kind of smile at one another. She says it was a very benevolent interaction. She said that she took away from it that he was happy, that people were still recognizing his work, still coming to his house, still kind of recognizing his genius. So that was her interaction with Frank's ghost. The next one comes from a architectural intern. This was in the 2016-ish. Her name is Jamie. She's out in the same desert gardens. She is in her sketchbook drawing the house, trying to recreate some of Frank's works. So she's sitting there, she's sketching away in her notebook, completely lost in her train of thought, oblivious to the world around her, when she hears somebody say, "Have you seen Frank?" She looks up and she sees this woman in front of her who she has no clue who she is, never seen her before. She goes, I'm sorry, what? And this lady repeats, "Have you seen Frank?" Now, Jamie starts to rack her brain. Frank. I don't think I know anyone on staff named Frank. I don't think I've seen anyone else. I don't think I've met anyone named Frank here that works here. And she kind of looks around, I'm sorry, I don't really know everyone yet, but I don't think I've met anyone. Frank who? Who are we talking about here? And this lady just looks at her and says, have you seen Frank again? So at this point, Jamie once again, starts to put some context clues together and realizes that this lady is not dressed like somebody would be in the mid-2010s. She's dressed like somebody around the turn of the century. So she starts to think, all right, this is weird. Things aren't adding up. This lady's only saying 3 words. Have you seen Frank? 4 words, I guess. And she starts to get a little creeped out. So she decides that she's going to try a Hail Mary here, and she says, do you mean Frank Lloyd Wright? To which this woman kind of smiles at her a bit and nods her head, still not saying any words. So she goes, okay, I hate to tell you this, but Frank died like a long time ago. To which she said the look on this woman's face turned very sorrowful, and she just disappeared right in front of her eyes. Now Jamie's freaked out, so she runs inside. She finds the first person on staff and says, you'll never guess what happened to me, and tells the guy the story. He says, all right, come with me, please. Takes her into the foyer, points to the picture on one end of Frank, but on the other end, there's a picture of Martha. He goes, by any chance, is that the one you saw? She goes, yes, that's exactly who I saw. Who is it? He goes, that's Martha. That's Frank's one true love. That is, her ghost has been seen here as well. So both Frank and Martha's ghost have been seen on the grounds of Taliesin West out here in Scottsdale, and neither one had been seen there until after some genius had the idea of digging up their bodies, cremating them, and spreading their ashes out here.
Yeah.
So that is the story of
Yeah, thanks, genius.
Right? Yeah, I don't know who came up with that idea, and I don't know how they were allowed to do it, but